What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another video. Today, I'm bringing you my 2024 redraft tight end rankings, and man, the tight end position is one that is so weird because it is so top heavy, and even the options at the top just aren't that awesome. It's a pretty weak position in fantasy football, and it kind of has been for the last probably 2 or 3 seasons, where we felt like a pretty strong drop off from previous seasons. How kind of fantasy football I've been playing for like 10 plus years used to be. I mean, this is just a completely different ball game now when it comes to the tight end position. Without kind of further ado, I just want to get into it because I don't want this video to be 3 hours long. The tight end position, like I said, is one that is really rocky this year, but I'm still going to start out with the man who pretty much leads it every year, and that's Travis Kelce. People are worried about Travis Kelce and the Kansas City Chiefs. And listen, Travis Kelce is someone who has been kind of the staple of the position for the last, almost like 6, 7 years. And he is just amazing. He had definitely a decline season last year, but I'm not willing to just completely give up on the guy because I've just seen him do it time and time and time again. With Kansas City this year, it was a down year for Mahomes, and the offense itself just didn't click. I don't think it was a thing of Kelce got old, Kelce sucks, Kelce just isn't the same, because we saw him in the playoffs be very productive. And I'm not willing to just give up on Travis Kelce now. He did kind of have a down season looking at his stats, only 93 receptions, which is still awesome for a tight end, 984 yards and 5 touchdowns, where the season prior, he was at 1,300 yards and 12 touchdowns. So obviously some things have changed. I don't think an outlier season in his yards per route ran, or yard per reception rather, where he went from basically being 12.7, 13.5, 12.2, 12.2 down to 10.6, where you lose, almost 2 yards a reception. That's significant. I don't think it was anything that had to do with him as a player. I think it more had to do with the Chiefs offense. Mahomes kind of took, I don't want to say step back, obviously, because he won the Super Bowl. He's awesome. But the receiving core just really wasn't set up to stretch the field like it had in prior years. So everything was dink and dunk last year. Now they have Xavier Worthy, who's just the speedster out of Texas, who they drafted in the first round. They brought in Hollywood Brown, who can really stretch an offense, or stretch a defense, rather. And I think it will just open up the middle of the field for Travis Kelce. So I'm still going Travis Kelce as my tight end one. I know you aren't probably going to see that as much anymore. You're probably going to see people saying Sam Laporta, who had a really great year last year, Mark Andrews, who's been pretty much a rock star as a top 3 guy, even maybe Trey McBride. I know people really liked him and what he did in his last year. But I'm still going Travis Kelce number 1. Moving on to my number 2 guy, and that's going to be Mark Andrews. For me, Mark Andrews, it's just he's the focal point of an offense that isn't the high-flying offense, but he's just really, really good and talented. I mean, and if you look at Mark Andrews' stats as well, I mean, he's never really had a disappointing year. He's been a little up and down, but at the end of the day, I mean, when you see his stats, last year in 10 games, he had, 45 receptions for 544 yards and 6 touchdowns. That's not too out of the normal for him. Average about 55 yards a game, and 6 touchdowns in 10 games is nothing to scoff at. It comes down to me. I just don't want to draft any of these tight ends early. That's kind of at the point where I'm at, where I just don't think it's worth doing. I just don't see the benefit in taking a tight end early. And I think Mark Andrews is great. I think he's really talented. I think literally Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid, Trey McBride, George Kittle, Evan Ingram, like those are the next guys coming up, and they're all pretty talented players. They just don't get utilized enough for me to really step back or really like want to draft them early. There's no one to me that screams I'm a guaranteed 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, and why am I going to take that early? So with these guys, I'm just not looking to take them, like I said, early in drafts. Doesn't mean they're worthless, obviously, but I would just chase other positions. And that's where it kind of comes down to, I have Kelce and Mark Andrews and Sam Laporta, and that's kind of my top tier of 3, I would say, that I feel the most confident in. With Sam Laporta, who's coming off another great year at the Lions, with him and Amon-Ra St. Brown there in Detroit. That offense is set up for Laporta to succeed. And That's why I have him this high. He's talented. He's a great run blocker, so he's always on the field. He plays on a team that's really on the rise, that was really close to making a really deep, almost a Super Bowl run. I think Sam Laporta is great, and he's had some really high volume games, which is great to see too. It's not just a boomer bust guy. Like, he's had some big games with pretty solid floor, a solid floor. So that's why I have Sam Laporta 3. Then we're gonna move on to. I kind of call this group the let's hope and pray that they could revitalize the position group, mixed in with George Kittle. Next for me is Dalton Kincaid. I just saw Kincaid play last year, and when he got the job, he just looked different. He didn't look like your standard kind of big blubbering tight end. He looked like one of those guys that's a receiver playing tight end. He looked really fluid with the ball in his hands. I think he could be one of those special players that is just a really utilized weapon for Josh Allen this year. And to be honest, too, the offense opening up. Usually how I play fantasy football, how I draft is I'm a talent over situation guy. I've said in every video that usually if you give me, I would rather take a really good player in a not so good situation over a okay player in a great situation. Every time I would take the more talented player like 10 out of 10 times. Not everyone plays fantasy football that way, but for me, Dalton Kincaid, and with this position especially, I kind of throw that logic out the window because the position sucks so bad. I'm looking for guys that are just in great situations that I think can have a chance to be targeted heavily. While I think Kincaid is talented, I think the situation's great too. They have no more Stephon Diggs, even Gabe Davis is gone. So you look like a receiving core of Curtis Samuel, So Curtis Samuel, I'm forgetting his name, Khalil Shakir, and Keon Coleman, who's a rookie. So I think Kincaid can kind of just be the number one weapon there if he gets the opportunity. And even not, I think he's still going to be really highly, snap counts are going to be high and targets are going to be there. Then we move on to last year's kind of like sleeper fantasy darling in Trey McBride. Another guy who could just step in and be targeted really heavily. Showed a lot of flashes on film. I know I traded him last year during my season. That was a big mistake because I didn't believe it, but the guy just kept producing. McBride is good, and my only worry is that how much can really come from Kyler Murray as a offensive provider. You're going to have Marvin Harrison there, who's going to be, supposed to be this rookie, phenomenal, generational talent. You have other decent receivers there as well with like Michael Wilson, who showed flashes. Zay Jones is there. You have James Conner out of the backfield. There's definitely an opportunity for Trey McBride to be there, but I haven't seen Kyler Murray really put up big baller stats through the air in his career, and coming off a torn ACL, kind of in this new offense, everything's just new for Kyler Murray. So if we can see Kyler Murray kind of come back and be this new generational quarterback that he was supposed to be, this franchise guy that they're pegging him to be, then sure, I'll be really good with Trey McBride. But if he ends up just throwing for 25 touchdowns, I think McBride could have some struggles. Then we move on to number 6, and this guy has been one of those players for his entire career who's super talented, but man, battles injury and is just up and freaking down, man. And when he's down, this guy is like drowning in the bottom of the ocean down. This guy is buried 6 feet under, 10 feet under, whatever you want to say. And that's George Kittle, man. I love the guy. Super talented, plays so hard, is a rock star. When he plays, he's awesome. But he misses games. He gets hurt a lot. Just sometimes it falls off the face of the earth and disappears. But when he plays and he's there and he's getting targeted, the guy puts up numbers. But when he's not, he's not. That's kind of why I have him lower. He'd be someone I would be cool targeting later, and knowing that he's probably not week in gonna be, consistent, but the weeks he hits, the boy hits and he wins you a week from the tight end position perspective. Then we move on to number 7, Evan Ingram. And this is one that I talked about in my last video I just posted, my quarterback ranking video. It kind of looked with Dak Prescott. He had a great year, but my gut is screaming at me and it's yelling, don't trust it. Don't do it. Don't. Just don't do it. And that's how I feel about Evan Ingram. This guy who has been a solid, career tight end playing with the Giants and Jacksonville. And last year kind of had this big breakout, but in a season where he caught well over 100 passes, but only for like 800 or 900 yards and 4 touchdowns. It's just, to me, it feels phony. And if that's the way that your offense is supposed to roll, where you have this tight end who is talented, he's a really physical, like physically, great athlete kind of tight end. I think Evan Ingram's a good player, but if that's your offense where you're going to throw to your tight end, and 100 plus times for under 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns, I just don't think you can go into the next season going, let's run it back. Let's do that again. It worked, because it didn't work. It simply did not work last year. So I think Evan Ingram could possibly kind of fall back to earth and not be the random focal point of that offense like he was last year. But there's still the chance, because, hey, the guy did it, obviously he did it. So there's always a chance it can come back. And I think he's like athletic and fun. And he's another one of those guys that's just like great after the catch. So, yeah, Evan Ingram's my 7. Then we move on to the group of, I'm not believing in it, but maybe, right? We have Jake Ferguson, who had another pretty solid year last year where he had, 700 to 800 yards and some decent touchdowns with Dak. I've seen this with Dalton Schultz, and I don't think Jake Ferguson is like way better of a player than Dalton Schultz. I've seen this kind of mini run where they just utilize the tight end. It could definitely work for sure, but I think the upside there with him at 8 is more of, maybe he just gets peppered with 120 targets next year, because who else really is there in that Dallas offense? And sure, maybe he catches, 80 of those balls and goes out for another 800 yards and 10 touchdowns, and it's just a solid tight end for you. That's tight end position, man. I mean, if you can get 800 yards and 6 to 8 touchdowns, you got a top probably 6, 7 guy right there. Then moving on to number 9, Kyle Pitts. I would love to see this guy do it. He's supposed to be this high athletic freak, but he's just been so disappointing. I mean, maybe Kirk Cousins is the person that revitalizes his career, really rises him from just being this kind of mediocre, underwhelming player. And maybe Kyle Pitts can finally come back another year stronger from the ACL and step right in and just be this athletic freak that he's supposed to be. That's kind of my shot on it. At this point, I mean, we're at the tight end 9. You're not taking any of these guys in the top half of your draft. So why not take the shot on Pitts, and maybe it just works out? And truthfully, my thing is this. You can comment on this video and be like, Tank Sports, you're a freaking moron. You should have David Njoku number 7. And I'm going to go, yeah, maybe. Or you could say anybody. You can even say, hey, I'll take Brock Bowers. And I'll go, cool, man. Like, whatever you want to do. And that's kind of the point we hit after probably Evan Ingram is like, dude, just take your guy, whatever kind of bull crap, yeah, this is why he's going to succeed. Whatever reason you want to come up with, I'm cool with it. And that's kind of how I feel about, I'm just going to loop the rest of these guys together, honestly. Kyle Pitts, Dallas Goedert, Luke Musgrave, TJ Hawkinson, David Njoku, Brock Bowers, and Cole Kmet. All these guys have a million things you can say. They're in strong offenses. They were good last year. They're athletic freaks, all of these things. And I don't want this video to be long, because there's no reason for it to be. But when we get to this point, I just think you go, take a guy you like. You're going to get him in round probably like 8, 9, 10 anyway. And probably, what you draft 11, 12 rounds in fantasy usually. So just take the guy you like, take a shot. Really research what you like and don't like, and just go after it. Obviously, it's early and there's still plenty of time to make that decision, but you're going to be able to get Dallas Goedert, Luke Musgraves, TJ Hawkinson will probably go higher, but just coming off the ACL, that's why I have him lower. David Njoku, Brock Bowers, and Cole Kmet. You should be able to get any of these guys in the back half of your draft. So narrow in, pick one, and go for it, man. Go for it. There's no really point in breaking them down, because I'm just, like I said, I'm saying the same things over and over again. Talented players, not great situation, don't get utilized a ton, or they're not that great at players, but they're in good situations. It's the same thing. I'm basically repeating myself. So like I said, pick a guy, like a guy, go for it. Don't be scared. Just take them. All right. And those were my 2024 fantasy tight ends. Thank you for watching the video. I know I cut it a little bit short, but man, the tight end position is just garbage. It sucks, man. And finding the right guy is really hard to do. So like I just preached for a minute, like take a guy at the back half of your draft that you really like. We'll talk more about tight ends. I'll definitely have more videos coming out about tight ends that I'm going to be targeting late in drafts. So stay tuned, stick around. We'll break it down even more. And yeah, if you like the video, leave a like below, subscribe to the channel for plenty of content. If you want to check out any of the other positions, they should all be posted. I have my quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and obviously this is tight ends. So if you want to check any of those out, check the playlist below. Subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.